can exist in whichever circumstances. Tobias Chanji, KTN News, Mombasa County.
Now to a story that has sparked a conversation worldwide is that Nigeria's presidential election, which was due to be held today, has been postponed by a week. The chairman of the country's electoral commission said hours before polls were open, addressing journalists in the early hours of Saturday, Independent National Electoral Commission Chairman Mahmoud Yakubu said the delay was needed to hold a free and fair election. The country's presidential elections in 2011 and 2015 were also delayed over logistics and security issues.
Following a careful review of the implementation of its logistics and operational plan and the determination to conduct free, fair and credible elections, the Commission came to the conclusion that proceeding with the election as scheduled is no longer feasible. Consequently, the Commission has decided to reschedule the Presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, 23rd February 2019.
Conversation that I have been promising you. With me in studio is Mr. Abel Oyeyo, an international relations expert. Thank you so much for coming. Now, the world has woken up to, I would say, shocking news. The postponing of an election just 5 hours to the poll. What do you make of that?
I think that is very sad because, you know, it's an indication of lack of preparedness, because if there was such a big issue, you know, to lead to the postponement, that is something they should have been able to see, let's say like a week or so before today. So it's unfortunate that you have to postpone an election 5 hours to the, you know, event. And if we're talking about Nigeria, that is the largest economy in Africa, and
sure,
there's so much that is going on, and there's a lot of focus on the election. So I think it's a bad signal. Obviously, it's happened before, but we don't expect that in 2019. It shouldn't have happened. But again, I don't think it's necessary to go forward with an election, you know, it's going to just flop. So I think in as much as, again, it's late, you can say, if it's going to happen a week after today, then it's got to be credible. So the time they've requested for should be enough to actually present or give us an election that can convince us that Nigeria has made
free and fair election.
Progress.
Yes. Now, on the issue of credibility, so many Nigerians, especially on social media, have now brought out the issue of rigging. They say this could be, you know, a plot to rig the elections.
Well, you know, voters are going to say so many things. Again, there's disappointment. Talk about movement. Some guys had to move from one state to another where they registered as voters. So that kind of frustration can lead to venting. So many things are going to be said. But I get those opinions of Nigerians. So the main thing is, guys are watching what's going on, and now it's upon the INEC to do what they need to do to give us a credible election, which of course can go ahead to vanquish the naysayers. So they have to use the 1 week they've requested for accordingly. And, you know, regardless of what they do, the 1 week, you know, the postponement, just a few hours to the event, to the big event in Nigeria, is a serious source of disappointment and frustration. Given that we're talking about Nigeria, talk about the issues they have, insecurity, poverty, corruption.
Yes.
And there's a serious focus on how the election is being, you know, conducted. So it's a serious source of disappointment. Yes. Okay.
Abel, I'll be coming back to you shortly, but I understand we now have to cross over to Nigeria, where we have our VOA correspondent, Hawa Omar, who is a reporter with our partner station VOA, who will give us real-time details on the postponement of the election. Hawa, if you could get me, just tell us the mood of the country as at now.
Seriously, nobody sees this coming, because a lot of people, everybody was prepared for this election. Most of the people that don't have access to internet don't even have the information. Not until they go to their polling units, that's when they find out that the election has been coming. Nobody sees this coming. So when the INEC an emergency meeting with the stakeholders, That's when people start thinking, okay, what is going to happen? What will be the outcome of this election, of this meeting? And again, what of people that travel to their village to cast their vote? What would be their fate? A lot of people leave their offices and everything they are doing to travel so they can cast their vote. But what would be their fate now? I think this is very, very sad.
Yes, indeed, Hawa, it is very sad, very unfortunate. But it did mention that no one saw this coming. But Hawa, if you remember in 2011, and 2015, there was a repeat of such a scenario. The election was delayed by several days. Did you really not see it coming?
They should have corrected their mistake from what happened in 2015, because I went in Twitter and said they have to provide all the materials that are places that are affected with the fire incidents, like Abia, Plateau, and Accra. So I believe they should have corrected their mistake. They should have learned from what happened in 2015.
Yes, Hawa, carry on.
Okay, and
okay, I'm not sure if you could get us, Hawa. You did mention about the banning of, yes, Hawa, we can get you, but you mentioned about the banning of the smart cards, which were about more than 4,600 smart card readers. Could this have been a contributing factor to, the postponement of the elections?
I don't think so. They should have they should have known since now that they are tempered or has been tempered. Not until 6 hours after the polls. This is crazy. This is crazy. Everybody was prepared for these elections. So
Everybody was.
This is unfortunate.
Everybody was indeed prepared, Howard. But I have another question. The Independent National Electoral Commission, led by one Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, has said that they will be meeting key stakeholders today at 2 p.m. at the Abuja International Conference Center. What do we expect from the meeting?
We expect that, because they have been telling us, I found a report just ago, that they are fully prepared for this election. They have finished distributing materials for the election. So I think this holds. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. I will probably be getting back to you at 1 p.m. Now, Abel, back to you. They have 84 million registered voters. That is like half, more than half
to
Kenya's population, right?
Yes.
73 presidential candidates, of course, the main ones being the incumbent Muhammadu Buhari and Atiku Abubakar.
Yes.
What do you make of this?
Well, I think when you look at Nigeria as it is now, there is so much that is going on. Talk about insecurity, talk about a hotly contested election between the two major candidates, that is the incumbent and Abubakar himself. So I think it's okay to ask for more time so as to make sure mistakes do not happen, which can lead to declaration of the election as not being free and fair. So I think I could call it a wise move because it's happened before. And if this kind of postponement is meant to lead to a credible, free and fair election where every participant is satisfied, then I think it's okay.
But again, I take you back to what you said.
Yes.
I mean, they knew very well the election was supposed to be held today. Shouldn't they have made sure everything is proper by today? Now,
there's a problem. There are some things you cannot expect. And in as much as, you can plan accordingly, some things can happen. You've heard about the burning of smart cards. There's what we call constant attack by Boko Haram. Sometimes you cannot even get to know whether the guys you hired to take care of electoral materials are actually not going to turn against you, because it can happen.
Yes.
So maybe something somewhere has happened. They've talked about the logistical issues. Maybe they've gotten to a point where they cannot transport election materials to the required places. So asking for time is okay. The problem is they should have gotten a way to prepare Nigerians that something can come up that can lead to a postponement. But again, I think what I'd do is to request all these guys to make sure Nigerians had calmed down and assured that in a week the election is going to be okay. And at the end of the day, you remember last time during the Jubilee nominations, Tuju said if 50% of election materials have been gotten to a station, elections can go on. The question was, if 50% of the materials are what, just ballot papers, can you have an election? That is why it flopped. So you can see what we have there. That is incompetence. So these guys have taken the right move. Of course, the issue of postponing the election on the day, the material day, is a problem.
Yes.
As how I said, guys had moved. Some guys don't have access to information, so they've gotten to polling centers and even lined up. Yes. You can see the frustration there. Yes. But then again, I think we need to support the Independent National Election Commission so that in a week's time, they can present to us a good election. Nigeria is big. It's our biggest economy. It has serious issues of insecurity, Boko Haram and all that. And I think they need to be given more understanding and support. Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the issues they're facing. There's insecurity, there's corruption, and the economy. I want us to dwell on insecurity a little bit. Yes. A peace agreement was signed among the contenders, right? Just to ensure a free and fair election and a peaceful one. And I just take you to 2015 when Goodluck Jonathan lost and Buhari took over. This. And he considered defeat. In fact, in his own words, he actually did say, my ambition is not worth the blood of any Nigerian. Do we foresee that in this election, say if Buhari lost?
I think what's going on so far, there's a lot of decency, especially between Buhari and Abubakar. No one has shown that they're likely to resort to violence. And I think Nigeria has made serious progress given the size of the population and the challenges they've faced in the past. And the administration of Buhari has not been as bad as people think. And there's some kind of sympathy from Nigerians towards the man. He's been sick, but then he's kept his promise of fighting corruption and trying to tackle, insecurity. So I don't expect the indecency of, taking up arms to fight. So Jonathan versus Buhari scenario might arise whereby the winner, is magnanimous and then the loser, can accept. But again, that goes back again to the NEC. It has to present an election which can convince the contenders that it was indeed either a fair win or a fair loss. That is it. So the buck stops with the Independent National Election Commission.
Certainly.
Yes.
Let's talk about young blood, and this cuts across Africa at large.
Yes.
There are about 10 people that are below 40 that are contending for the election, the youngest being one Chike Ukaegbu, who is only 35 years old. But this country has the largest population of young people. Buhari is 76, Atiku is 72. Let's not talk about Kenya. Let's not talk about Robert Mugabe, former president of Zimbabwe. Let's not talk about Yoweri Museveni, Uganda. Is this a problem that we're facing as a continent?
Yeah, from a researcher's perspective, we call it a grandfather's curse, and it's affected so many parts of Africa. I think in Kenya we've been a bit lucky because the president is below, 70, yes. And we have a good number of young people who can ascend to the presidency. So I don't think actually I think we shouldn't get to a president who is above 70 years old. And I'm not saying someone who is 70 years old cannot be president, but I don't think it's good for any country. So Nigeria has that kind of curse, and I don't think they're going to escape because the president will either be Buhari or Abubakar. The guys who've come out, it's a good show, but then I don't think they have a chance because of, talk about lack of the economic strength to present a serious challenge, and talk about again, the lack of what we call customization of the mind to a young person. Anytime a young person presents himself or herself to such a serious position, they label us jokers who need to wait. So it's a curse we have, and I think it's likely to be around for a long time. But then in South Africa, the southern part of Africa is different because they embrace young people, and I think it's going to be okay. Yeah, so it's a transition we're making. It's slow, but I think it's coming.
Your take, Abel. Buhari versus Atika both have a history in politics. Atika is the former vice president under, the leadership of Olusegun Obasanjo. He has vied for presidency about 4 times. This should be the 5th time.
5th time, yes.
Buhari, too, over time he's lost, but at least he did win in 2015. And by the way, he did say he wouldn't be contesting again. He wouldn't be vying again for presidency. He did say that, I think, in 2011.
He said it.
He did say that, right?
Yes.
So between Buhari and Atika, for you, who will take it next week?
I think the president is going to be re-elected. I think it actually means good for Nigeria. And I think his record as far as fighting corruption, which is a very big problem in Nigeria, is concerned, it's fairly clean compared to Abubakar. He has so many. The vice president and Obasanjo has so many scandals, on his neck.
Yes.
And I think Nigerians...
He was actually banned from traveling to the US.
That is it.
Yeah.
So I think they need to stick to Buhari. He's had issues with his health. That is why he's not been able to do so much.
That's true.
So I think he needs another 5 years so as to, see what happens. He needs another term. And I think Nigeria will be okay under his leadership. And it's good for the continent.
Okay, that's you, Abel. Now, whoever wins on Saturday next week, what is that one thing they should do between 2019 and 2023, I believe? Yes. What is that one thing they should do to leave an impact in Nigeria?
I think they need to get Nigeria out of the bracket of the most corrupt countries in the world. That is it. If that is done, Nigeria will be okay.
That will be
And
okay.
because that is the largest economy in Africa, I think that it's good for the continent as well. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the time we had. Thank you so much for coming through. Of course, we will be watching out for the elections next week. I hope they don't postpone again.
I also hope
But
so.
then again, you